Genesis 1 and 2, the language is the language of the construction of a temple. How do we know this? How do we know that Eden, the garden, was like a temple? See, in the ancient world, the ancients believed that if they built a temple and then they built a statue, an image of their god, either with clay or wood or metal, they believed in what was called an open mouth ceremony. They believed that if they put that image, that statue, inside of a shrine or temple, they believed the spirit of their god would come and live in that statue. Well, in Genesis 1, God, over a series of 7 days, describes through his words, through his commands, the constructing and filling of a temple. And then he puts his image at the end of Genesis 1, that's us. God made man in his image. He puts his image in the garden, in the temple. And in Genesis 2, he instructs Adam and Eve how to order that temple. So this is priest language. Genesis 1 and 2 is king priest language or priestly language, describing how to order a temple. By the way, Genesis 1 and 2 is not a scientific account of the beginning of the world. I know a lot of people argue over that, and I see a lot of people on the internet, believers and non-believers, arguing the sequential creation of material things. It is not describing the material origins of the world. It's describing what a temple looks like in the ancient world. How do we know this? Well, the temple, the garden, was constructed over 7 days with a series of speeches from God himself. It says, and God said on day 1, and God said on day 2, and God said on day 3, and so forth. In 1 Kings chapter 8, God tabs King Solomon, David's son, to construct the first permanent temple. The first original temple was the garden. So then God chooses a new family, Noah and his family. And he constructs the ark. And the ark is a floating Eden. We'll come back to that. Number 3, God chooses Abraham and his family, the Israelites. And he says, build a mobile tabernacle in Exodus 34 through 40. And then in 1 Kings chapter 8, God calls Solomon to build a permanent temple for his dwelling. Solomon builds the temple, and then in 1 Kings chapter 8, he consecrates and sets apart the temple in 7 days with a series of speeches. This is mirroring what God did in Genesis 1. Same structure is used in Genesis chapter 6, 7, and 8, where God calls Noah to construct what is essentially a floating Eden. It's a floating garden temple meant to be the place where humanity starts over. After the waters recede from the flood, Noah and his family restart the human project. Then you get to Exodus 34 through 40. God calls Moses and gives Moses instructions. And 7 different times between chapters 34 to 36, God says, and the Lord commanded Moses, and Moses did all the Lord commanded. And the Lord commanded Moses, and God said to Moses. Again, same language as in Genesis 1. You have people building, constructing a form or a structure, and then it was filled with furnishings. It was filled with furniture. It was filled with things that were supposed to be holy and consecrated, set apart in that temple. So, how is Eden like a temple? Well, God spoke over a series of 7 days. He formed a structure, and then he filled it, and then he came to dwell in it with his images. That's us, but his images are alive. So, we should live for God today. We should give our allegiance to God through the person of Jesus Christ, because the whole world is supposed to be the temple of God, where he dwells with us, his image, and we order it the way he wants.